Well, hello, and welcome back. I'm AJ O'Neill. This is Beyond Code Live, and we're going to talk about how to use JSDoc and JavaScript in Node in particular to be able to get type linting without actually having to use TypeScript. So I had started this just a couple minutes ago, but I had an important call that I needed to answer, and so we're restarting here. Thanks for joining in. And I do have, let's see where, let me find the right tab now. So I'm going to have comments open both on, let's see. Yeah, both on Twitch and YouTube. Let me just get to that. Okay, good. Got that up here. Got that up here. And I think we do now have that up here-ish. Is this it? No. Hold on. Let me just bring that up real quick so I can see any comments, and then we'll go ahead and get started. Sorry for the slight delay here. Okay, looks like... All right, now I've got the comments up. When I'm looking here, I'm looking at comments, just so you know. And I will go ahead and move on over to the cool stuff. So first of all, let me see if I can narrow this down. That's about where the 80 line marker is. I'm going to see if we can make this a little bit bigger so that you can see better. Now, I've got a project which I should have put in the description. In fact, I'll put it in the description right now. It is the, let me bring it up over here. So I'll show you what we're working from as soon as I get it up. All right, and I'm going to put this link in the chat, and I'm going to put it in the doobly-doo. So I'll paste it over there right now so we can all be on the same page. It looks like the prior comment is still there in Twitch, and then I'm just going to hit the edit on the doobly-doo real quick. So this will be in the doobly-doo as well. So this is the project, and basically what I've got is a starter pack that has a bunch of the config files that are set up to work with this project. And then this project has some TypeScript errors, or sorry, some type errors in JavaScript. There's no TypeScript here. It's all JavaScript, but it does have some type lint errors and whatnot in the JavaScript. And I leave those in there so that you can see this is how it works. And this is the type of error you get, so you can kind of see the benefit of it. And what I'm going through right now is actually updating the Readme. That's kind of the part that I'm going to be talking through, and I hope that if you've got any questions, you can leave them for me so that I can answer them. But essentially, well, let me go over to the other one, because this Readme is not quite up to snuff yet. But let me go ahead and kind of recap what I've got here, because I think I'm on a good path. So essentially, it's going to be a lot easier to start a new project with JSDoc for TypeScript linting than it is to convert a large project. Particularly if you have a large project, it might kind of border on the place of, was it worth it or not? If you're doing a refactor of a large project and you're really trying to suss out problems, then I think it really could be worth it. Even if you don't go through the whole process of typing everything, you can get some of that low-hanging fruit out of the way. But a typical project is going to look like this. So you're going to have, maybe your server.js or your index.js, whatever it is your entry point is for your project. And then you might have a lib directory where you have your JavaScript files. And then you may have some other files at the top level. But in general, I'll show you how to do this both ways. But in general, I'd recommend that you have just your one entry point and then put your other stuff under lib. That way you can keep your project a little bit cleaner in terms of what the top level directory looks like versus the code. Because in the top level directory, you've got your README, your license, your linting files, et cetera, and this just makes it a little bit, sometimes it makes it a little bit nicer to organize. Then apart from that, you're going to have your dependencies. And I guess one thing that I should put in here that I didn't put in here would be something like, well, I'd actually have to come up with a good example of something that's popular that I would be using in a project that I think you would be using in a project. But under node modules, there's two things that are going to be in there. One is there's an organization called @types, which I believe it's the definitely typed organization. I think they just moved their big multi-megabyte type pack into an organization, so it could be broken up and you don't have to install the whole thing every time. I think that's what that's coming from. So this is a community-sourced type declarations for common projects. So for example, Express is a dead project. It's not going to be updated anymore, most likely. It's not going to have types added to it, most likely. So you can npm install @types/express, and that will put that into your node modules @types express folder. And we'll go over how you need to instruct TS server to acknowledge that folder, because again, it's something that's community. It's not built into the TypeScript linter to look there. It's just a convention that's arisen in the community, and there are possible other places where stuff like that might go. In any case, that's important. And then we'll talk about the .d.ts files, and they apply kind of the same way locally as they do in node modules. But if any project in of itself either was written in JavaScript or has types in the project, those will be .t.ts files. And we'll talk about those in a second, but that's stuff that will end up in node modules. You've got your ts config. This is your, what is it, essentially, normally this would be your TypeScript project configuration file. In our case, this is our linter configuration file. And, whoops, just one second here. Something popped up on my screen. Okay, so this is going to be essentially for our TypeScript linting. We're going to define the configuration here, and we're going to disable TypeScript and just enable the JavaScript linting with JSDoc. And then we have a local directory, which I think I'm actually going to rename this to typings, because I think that that's what's in the TypeScript documentation. But you're going to see, and I'll mention this in just a second. I guess I should just be a little lighter on this explanation, because we're going to go through it again down here. But the typings is where your own overrides are. So for example, a lot of people will have something like rec.user in Express, and that is something where you need to override the Express types to say, even though I'm getting this thing from Express, I expect there to be a rec.user there. Okay, and then you've got your types.js, and this is your standalone JSDoc. So basically, this is your it's local, but to your project, it's global. So anywhere in your project, you can reference these types that you put here, and this is all explicitly defined. None of these are conventions, but none of it is automatic. You have to explicitly define it in the TS config. So if we break down those key components just a little bit more, I kind of already did this for you, but you've got your source code. Like I said, that's your server.js, whatever's in your lib file. And you will write JSDoc files, but you also will likely write TypeScript definition files as well, depending on the way your project is structured. So it's a little bit obnoxious that you have to use two different conventions in order to accomplish this. But JSDoc is not robust enough all on its own to do all the things that need to be done for TypeScript definitions. So you will find instances where you do need to use a .t.ts, but hopefully it doesn't get too crazy. But you know, TypeScript was designed to work with TypeScript. You're going to, if you want to make everything perfect in your project with JSDoc and the TypeScript linter, you're going to have to probably rewrite some of your code. So I would not necessarily suggest you try that approach as much as, if it's a new project, great, do it. If it's an older project, just try to get the low-hanging fruit. So we got our typings that I just talked about that we can share. And there's a couple of different conventions you're going to see for, let's see, I think I actually put that in the wrong place. So we're going to have to move this note here. That actually goes down here. So let me put that here. And I think it's pretty common, types.js, but there are some other names that will get used. The community modules we talked about, and then the ones that come with projects. So I'm just going to be finishing up this documentation. Let's see. I see we've got a couple people watching. Hello, welcome. Where are you from? What do you do? What's your interest in Node or TypeScript or JSDoc or linting or whatever it is? I'd love to know what it is that you're hoping to get out of this as I go through it. Now the TypeScript overrides, that's this part that I was just talking about. So I'm going to go back up here and I'm just going to copy this, and I think I am gonna rename it to typings because I've seen it a couple different ways in a couple different places, but what it is officially in the docs is at typings, and so that's why I think that I'm just gonna go ahead and rename it to that. Let me go. Whoa, that's not what I want to do. I'll just put all these in place here, and then I'm going to delete some of them because I'm just trying to find a way to break this down and make it a little bit easier. And then I'm going to have to rename that in the project as well. So we're going to do this. And then do that. And then do this. And then I think we just get rid of all this other stuff here, right? So yeah, I think it's really just that right there. That's what your type overrides are going to be. So those are kind of the 4 key components, and they have to be properly enumerated in the tsconfig. And so I want to go over what that looks like. So this is another thing that has to be broken down in a couple of different ways. And I'm thinking maybe I want to make this as simple as possible. I'd love your help, and if you've got some ideas about which way I should go about this or approach this. But so for this one, I think maybe I should put here, which maybe these components must be referenced in your, all 4 of these components must be referenced in your tsconfig. Let's see, .json. So, tell me what you think this ought to look like, because I could put it in here. I could renumerate it down below, and I guess I should put in here. Let's see, ... So we need to have all of the JavaScript files need to be part of the include. Everything that's in our project, that's what include is for. So, and I don't remember what the order significance is. I think that I saw people saying that types needs to go, your type file, which some people call typings, needs to go first before your code, and then you put your code. I'm not 100% clear on that. I also know that, well, we'll see in a second, you can get warnings in your types file that you won't get those warnings regularly, or rather when the warnings that you get in your types file will not be warnings once it's loaded the rest of the JavaScript, I guess is how I would put it. So let's see here. These must be properly enumerated in JSconfig. So maybe we could say 1. Is it your, what were we calling this? Your source code and local types. So your source code and local types. This is really, really important. Go in the include section. And maybe I should reorganize this. We could name this way. The include section must enumerate your source code and local types, or your local types and source code, because I think, like I said, some people are recommending that the local types go first. So you can have multiple local type files. That's fine, but it seems like I guess you'll figure it out for your own project how things will go. And you could, of course, put your types in lib, and that would be totally fine. I like to keep it separate just as part of like logically understanding what's going on. But that's the include section is really important. Let's see. This section must enumerate your types. There we go. And then the next section that's really important in the tsconfig would relate to root types. I think that would be another one. So where was that at? Root types here. And this also has to do with compiler options. So I'm just going to bring this up and see if we can do this like so. And we don't actually need all this stuff. Well, we do need some of this stuff. So there are some default options that need to be there no matter what your project is. But these options are particularly important. Oops. Yeah, this was the one where they said your local typings should come before the community typings. I'm almost certain of that. All right, so I'm gonna do this as well, where we just say like that to kind of make it known that this is a file that has a bunch of stuff in it. There we go. Oh, and this one goes in even more. Just trying to make this mirror what it actually looks like. Okay. So we've got compiler options dot type roots. Should specify your, whoops, I didn't actually want to do local types here. I wanted to say local types like this. I wanted to have that in italics. Your local types and source code. So this should specify your local overrides and definitely type, or I guess community type definitions. So it's the key point is that when a module is required or imported, and we'll go into this in a bit, but it'll have a .js and a .ts. If it was a TypeScript project and it was built from TypeScript, it'll have these two files side by side. So if those files are side by side, that is the one thing that is completely conventional. You don't need to configure it. But for anything else, it needs to be configured. So local overrides and the community type definitions, they need to be specified as part of type roots. Okay, and then what we do next is, let's see, what parts have we covered? I guess we covered all 4 of those. So then we need to tell, I guess the next thing, let me go back here, is I'll say these compiler options must be, let's see, these changed from the default setting in order to make TS server behave as a linter rather than as a compiler. All right, and then here, let me go ahead and start that out. There's a bunch here, and I'm going to need to actually go through a project. I think I'll just set up something on DigitalOcean so that I've got a clean project and I make sure I don't miss anything. And we also want this in Node. So must be changed from default to behave as a linter for Node rather than as a compiler for the browser. Because that's kind of an important distinction too. Because in Node, we use CommonJS. Whereas if you're going to do code in the browser, it does have it has different options if you just wanted to write old-fashioned browser code rather than import code. But there are different options that you would turn on. You wouldn't be using the CommonJS option for that. Or maybe you would if it was with Webpack or something. The browser is much more complicated. Node's pretty simple in this regard. And so there's a couple things we need to make sure stay. Yeah, pretty much all of these things need to be handled. And also I would mark node modules again. TS server doesn't have any concept of node. And so excluding, that's something I'm going to have to add back up here, but excluding node modules does not mean that it's not going to be able to pull type definitions from node modules. What it means is it's going to separate that from what it's including. So many of you might have something like */star.js, meaning capture all JavaScript files from the root down. But if you do that, then it's particularly important that you have the exclude there, because otherwise it'll get confused between what it's importing and what it's looking at as your code. And you definitely want to make sure that that gets excluded. So I'm trying to, it's a lot of configuration here. Unfortunately, it's not as simple as just, here's two options, you turn on and you go. If you can kind of do that with this repository, but if you were to set this up manually one step at a time, these are the things that you need to know. And if you're debugging, if something goes wrong and you change some options, these are the things you need to go back and say, hey, did I get this stuff right? Oh, hello, welcome. Feel free to tell me where you're from and what your interest in Node and JSDoc or TypeScript is. And, feel free to ask questions at any time. I'm just this isn't really meant to be so much a tutorial session as much as it is I'm finishing up the documentation for my, I learned some stuff and now I'm figuring out what all that means, or not figuring out what all that means, but figuring out how to condense that down and just trying to make sure I get that I've solidified and crystallized the knowledge of what I've learned. So feel free to ask questions. So 1, 2, 3, 4. Do we want it like that? Is this off? 1, 2, 3. Hold on. 1, 2, 3, 4. That's right. So let me do this. 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, these are all off by 1. Well, that's not too hard to fix. And then I'll talk about each one of these and what they mean momentarily. Oh, these are all now off by 4 still. So let's go ahead and fix that. Oh, that didn't like that at all. What is it doing? Is it like automatically converting something to... Hold on. 1, 2, 3, 4. Right? Oh, no, I just did it wrong. That was my bad. Okay. So talk about what these options mean. I don't actually know what all of them mean. I know what some of them mean for sure. And because I've encountered problems. So I'll do my best. And then let's just put our little ... here. And then we'll put our little ... here to signify. There's other options out there. Okay, so target. I think with Node, it's just as well to use ESNext. Basically, this is saying, is it going to produce linter errors for things other than whatever you specify? So if I say ES6 or 2015 or whatever the heck it is, then it's going to produce linter errors for any features that are used that are too new. I am really laggy when it comes to features of JavaScript. I don't use them until they're actually implemented. I think that it's a really poor practice to use features that aren't implemented in the language, especially considering how often they've been deprecated or they get changed or whatever. So my recommendation is use ESNext and don't use features of the language that aren't actually available in the language. If it requires transpiling, it's not a feature of the language. So, or, if it hasn't been in the standard for long enough for evergreen browsers to have adopted it for a year, then that's a no-go for me. It should be at least I actually prefer something like 2 or 3 years, but that's my recommendation. So anyway, I'm going to target ESNext because as I start to use stuff, I'm not using things that are bleeding edge, typically because I don't need them. I'm just using things that are useful. And I don't want to have to nitpick about like, oh, is it from ES5 or is it from ES12 or, whatever. Module common JS because we're using Node. You can use imports in Node as well, but it gets a little bit hairy. If you are doing a project, feel free to use imports in Node. If you're doing a library that's going to go to NPM, don't use imports in Node because then it's going to screw up stuff if people try to use your library and then it has to be transpiled. It's not worth it. I don't think there's a lot of work there. It is important that lib is left empty, and the reason for that is that if you do not leave lib empty, you'll see examples in blogs or whatever, people are like, oh, put this stuff in lib. Don't do that. It's old, it's deprecated. That use of it is deprecated. Lib is for if you're cherry picking. So say you're going to use ES6, but you don't want linter errors when you use async await, but everything else you want linter errors on. That's what lib is for. So you specify a target to the lowest common denominator, and then you put all of the extensions that you want to accept in lib to turn off linter errors for those things. So that's what that's for. Allow.js means that it is going to read in .js files. You absolutely want that to be turned on. Check.js means that it is going to lint JavaScript files. You absolutely want that turned on. So this is allow.js is read JS files. This is lint JS files. Now, what's the difference? The difference is, as I've pointed out on Twitter, and I'll link to this tweet, and people are going to argue with me, whatever. I'm going to stick to my guns on this one. But JavaScript or TypeScript is not a superset of JavaScript. It is a different language. It is a superset of a subset of JavaScript, which just means it's a different language. If it doesn't contain all the features and it's missing some features and it has extra features, that's a different language. So let me go ahead. I'll put this into the comments right now. So you've got that. I'll also add it to the whatchamajig in a bit. I actually just added it to the doobly-doo there. So TypeScript can basically ignore JavaScript, so it can read in the file and say, I'm going to pass this through in the output, but I'm not going to check it. So we want it to allow JavaScript files so it reads them in, and we want it to check JavaScript files so that it actually does lint them. It functions as a true linter. But then we don't want it to transpile. So we don't want it to transpile our JavaScript. And strict means whether or not it has use strict up at the top, it's going to treat everything for linting purposes as if that was there. So assume use strict. And then also, yeah, this is going to kind of be obnoxious because this doesn't actually... This is JSON 5, as it were. I wonder if that is allowed as a thing. It might be. It looks like it is. I'm actually going to put that here too. JSON 5. Let's see what happens. No, nothing. All right. So I might just leave that back at JS then. But then the other things can happen, whatever. No implicit any. This is a special option. I'm going to put this one in a different category because what that does is this comes into the superset subset problem. Not all JavaScript code can be typed. That's not actually possible. That's kind of what they sell you on, but you actually have to rewrite some of the code in order to get typing. And the no implicit any is what you want to turn on if you are going to type all of your JavaScript. So I'd recommend that first you just get the low-hanging fruit that the linter is giving to you, then go back and turn this on later. I would not recommend that you turn it on out of the gate because it's going to produce so many warnings, especially, I mean, if you've got a new project, yeah, turn it on. But if you have an existing project, don't turn that on because it's just going to make you want to turn off the linter because it's going to be an error on every other line. So basically, it's saying be strict about types that have been specified and be loose about types that have not been specified if you set this to false. If you set this to true, then it says be strict about types regardless of whether or not they've been specified. So after you've got the low hanging fruit, or if this is a new project, I'm just going to emphasize new there. Turn, I guess I should do it like this. no implicit any. This will strictly warn about untyped JavaScript, about all untyped JavaScript. Okay, so you probably want this off at first on existing projects and then turn it on so that you only lint types that you've added and care about, and then turn it on after you've got the low-hanging fruit. If this is a new project, it's fine to turn on right away. I kind of want to put that in a different place for people that skim and might otherwise skip that block there, because I think that that's important information. Okay, so I'm not really sure what the best way to break all that down is. We'll see. So that one we're going to move. Always strict. Actually, I think I misspoke. I think this one, assume use script whether or not it's present. And this is turn on all Typescript linting. I think. I'd have to go look at those again. And if you do the init, it'll actually have some comments there, but they're so much that it's kind of hard to read. No unused locals. This is something that you could just leave to JS hint. This one doesn't matter. I'm going to remove that. Now, as far as base URL paths and root dirs, I would leave these commented out. I don't understand them well enough yet to give advice on them, so I say comment them out. Because if you comment them out and you do have these other things, so I could just put that here. I don't understand these well enough to tell you how to use them. So I recommend that, recommend that you don't. All right. And I guess I could put these further down because let's just apply that to all of it there. Okay. The max node module JS depth is basically how many layers deep should it go when looking for types. The default is a very small number. I don't know what it is, but I just saw this in a comment, so I added it. This may not actually be necessary, but as I was trying to figure out, like, why is this working? Why is this not working? This is one of the things that I changed. I should do a more granular check on it and see if this has actually been a problem for me. But essentially, you don't want it to go down forever because it could take the TypeScript server forever to read all those dependencies. It's kind of like this. So typically, if it's one layer deep, you should be good. Because typically everything that you're actually using is something that you've installed. But so for example, Express uses all sorts of stuff. It's got tons of dependencies. And so when you use Express, sometimes you are interacting with other modules unwittingly. And that's where the max node module depth makes sense, is that when it's doing an import, how deep should it go into that import? So if you require Express, Express requires fetchmabob, and fetchmabob requires mime type, and mime type requires mime type server, and mime type server requires isString, so on and so forth. Do you want it to go all the way down to the maximum depth and gather all of that type information? Or is it enough to say whatever it is that Express exposes to you is probably not going to rely on the type definitions that are all the way down in is string. And so it's okay to have it stop. And so that's one of the things where you kind of got to figure out what's right for your project. So I would think that the low number that it is, something like 2 or 3, is probably good enough. So I think I'm going to change this to be that, and we'll see how it goes. I might need to put that in a separate place. Preserve symlinks. If you are using base tag, you want this to be false. So preserve symlinks will mean that it says preserve symlinks. What it actually means is ignore symlinks, meaning that it won't follow symlinks, if I understood correctly from the documentation. So it preserves it as a symlink rather than treating it as a folder or file. So if you're using symlinks on purpose, you probably want this to be false so that it follows symlinks rather than preserves symlinks. ES module interop means, that you want it to be able to allow node style require and imports in the same thing, because in the node community and the TypeScript community, whatever, you're going to find that there are a little bit of mix and match. And so you do want it to allow mix and match. If you turn this off, then it's going to want everything to be imports. So again, you don't want that for node. Or maybe if you have module common JS specified up here, then maybe this will do the opposite and will allow imports. But you want to allow both because there's mixed modules in the ecosystem. And then type roots. So type roots we already covered right up here, right? So we can get rid of that. So that is the compiler options that you need to change. And I'm going to do a diff of, I'm going to run tsc init. I think it's tsc init, TypeScript checker init. It produces a ts config. I'm going to get that, modify what needs to be modified, and then do a git diff. And I'm going to post that in here so you can see this is what the default is. This is what I changed it to, as well as being able to look over. And then these things here, the reason base URL actually I think does make sense because you want to tell it, I want to go from, base URL is where should it go from, where I don't know whether it's the package.json or the tsconfig.json, but it's basically saying from, I think it's saying from tsconfig.json, where should I be searching? And so base URL has an effect on the includes and the excludes, because I think the includes are relative to base URL, if I'm not mistaken. So I think that you want to leave that alone. Paths has special meaning that would be worthwhile to learn, but I haven't yet, and I found that what I've been doing with the type roots and the includes is working, so I don't want to go into paths, but supposedly this is like the newer way of doing things that's better. I just wasn't able to get to be able to read something that was clear to me at the time I was looking at it. So may affect includes, excludes, and type roots in unexpected ways. So unexpected / unintended. Yeah. All right, so with that, that's kind of the configuration. And again, you don't really need to, I think it's important to understand what these are, because if you have a problem, if it's not working, it's probably because one of those things are out of alignment. But let's see. Compiler. It behaves as a linter for node rather than as a compiler for browser TypeScript. Yeah, there we go. So I think we can take that out of there. One of the things that I'm going to do real quick, first I want to make sure that my tsconfig is cached. Yeah, it is. So I'm going to do this. I'm going to get rid of my tsconfig, and I'm going to write tsc, I think it's tsc init. Let's see if that works. That may not work. Is it Typescript init? No. Is it TS server init? No, that's not it. Is it TSC dash init? Yeah, right, there we go. TSC dash init. Okay. So let me go in here and let me add that. So if we were going to do this from scratch, we need to install TypeScript. We need to do TS init. We need to install our types. So you definitely want Node. You want, because Node is not likely to have type definitions. Okay, we got some comments here. The bot says, "Want to be famous? Buy big follows." The other bot says, "Want to be famous? Buy big follows." And to that, I will later go and click on spam, 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 spam. Okay. But remember, if you want to be famous, buy on big follows. Everybody knows it. So most of those things, by the way, for those of you that are not initiated, pretty much anytime you buy followers, it hurts you because you get bot accounts and accounts from places that you don't really have an audience, et cetera, et cetera. So it ends up slowing your growth and all that. There's like an Atom Ruins Everything on it or something like that. And I think the Veritasium cover this is too, as well. Anyway, so we've got the TSC init. So I'm going to go through real quick. First thing I need to do for this TSC config.json is I want to get rid of everything after, let's see. I want to get rid of all of the comments like that. Can we get rid of all of them? Okay, let's get rid of all those comments. Yeah, because now this is at least readable. Or maybe we should leave a gap for where there's like different things, like different sections of this, I guess. Sure, why not? So we'll leave a gap. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to stage this. And then I'm going to make the changes we need to make, and I'm going to do a git diff. So let me go ahead and stage this. All right, and then I'm going to go in here and see what do we need to change. So target, let's make that ES next, which apparently it doesn't matter what you case it, but they in the documentation case it, so whatever. We want allow.js, check.js, no emit. And I don't think that these are examples of default values. I think these are examples of what you want to change, what you're most likely to want to change from the default. So that's kind of an interesting way of doing it. No implicit any. We actually want that to be false. Strict null checks can be true. I mean, I think I'm not really sure which of these are default and which ones aren't. But let's see here. I mean, I don't know that we need too much else for this to actually work. Oh gosh. Hate implicit returns. No implicit override, no property access. Module restriction. Type roots. Yeah, so we're going to change this to what was it? We're going to do typings, and we're going to do node modules at types. And we're going to do preserve symlinks would be false. I feel like there was some other stuff. Oh yeah, and then we need to put in our includes so that we're clear on that. Let's go ahead and do that. So for this one, we've got types.js, we've got server.js, and then we've got lib /star.js, which this is a little bit, this glob actually means everything underneath of lib. It looks like it means everything more than one folder under lib, but it actually means including that folder itself. Okay, and then exclude, oh, and I think this was include, not includes. And then exclude is going to be node modules. So I think that is the difference that we need. Let me go check and see what we've got here. What did I say? Include and exclude. All right, max node module JS depth. Max node. You know, maybe we just won't include that one because that's not listed here as an option. So that might not even be an option anymore. So I think I'm going to take that one out because I don't think it really matters. So we're going to do git diff tsconfig.json. And tsconfig.json.diff. And I'm going to go ahead and copy that. Into the README here. So here we go. Diff. Boom. All right. There we go. Here's the difference between the default config file and the settings that work for me. That's interesting. Yeah, and then I'm going to change this according to what the doc says. The docs say typings. So I'm going to change that. And what else do we need to do here? Oh, hey, welcome. Feel free to tell me where you're from, what your interest is in Node, TypeScript, JSDoc, any of that. What I'm going through is I've got this starter project, just kind of like a template project that if you want to quickly get into this, because you'll see, you've probably already come across some blog posts if that's what you're trying to do, that are incomplete. And so this goes over, well, this doesn't yet go over it all, but this has here the types file, the tsconfig, the types directory, which actually I'm renaming that to typings because that seems to be what's referenced in the official docs, and then some of this other stuff. So basically you just get up and running with it really quickly. So when I complete this video, the completion of this video should be that we have everything documented that we can start a brand new project and just, well, we could just clone this, make one small edit to either VS Code or to Vim, and then boom, we're getting the type stuff that we want, the type linting that we want without using TypeScript, just using JavaScript, or that you could follow these steps and then for any project be able to add types to them. Okay, so I think that I'm kind of there. So key components, yeah, this is kind of annoying. I'm going to call this key configuration. And then maybe we enumerate this down here. Table of contents. Key components. Key configuration. Manual from scratch. And then we do need to have kind of a key benefit. I think people get the key benefits, but I kind of want to put a key benefits section in here. I'm just going to put a to-do for that. I think what I'm going to do is make a video where I start out showing what the benefits of this are, and then go through what you need to do to get it to work. Okay, so from scratch, that's stuff that we need to do. And I think I can get rid of this now. Let's see. Okay. Yeah, we want I want to make another, let's see, make a couple of comments about this. And I'm going to get rid of this one. I don't really know what that does entirely. So I'm just going to put myself a to-do for this. To-do. Figure out if this is important. I don't think it is. I think we're going to leave that out. Oops. Oh, whoops, and we need to end that comment there. There we go. All right, so I think that's kind of what we need to do. And next bit here. Should be able to show how this works. So let me see if I've got @types anywhere in here. Of course, it's in the package lock. I don't care about that. I do care about it in config.js. What the heck is this? Oh, that was just me. Yeah, I can get rid of that. That's junk. Let's see. What did we change about prettier? Oh, that's just prose wrap. Got it. Okay. All right. Anywhere else that we've got types? Let's see. Whoops. All right. tsconfig. Let's see where we have @types here. All right. So yeah, we do want to change this to typings. All right, let me look again. Package.json, tsconfig. Okay, that looks good. That's the one thing that I need to change. Let me make sure everything else is looking good in here. All right, so the 4 key things are, we've got our, what are our JS files? Types, and then we got everything else in lib, and then tsconfig does say lib, right? Let's make sure of that. Lib, yep. All right, so this is looking good. And now, if we actually open this up, we can give it a try and see. If I open up my server.js and I save, awesome. So we can see good. Oh, that's really awesome. So we get implied typing there. I love that. All right, so here, note. Okay. Yeah, this is looking really good. Now this is a little bit strange. This is a little bit strange because it should know here that require user. I'm not really clear on why this isn't working as desired, because it knows that app.use is express, and so I'm not clear on why it isn't able to imply require user. I think the reason is because it has there's multiple functions that can be used here, and so I think even though this would match by the number of parameters, since it doesn't have the type information, I think that's why. Note, we have to type this explicitly because app.use can accept multiple function signatures, and so the type cannot be inferred. I think I'm going to go. I don't know if that's, I don't know if I'm 100% true on that, but I'm going to go with it. So we do have to do here at type import express dot handler. Okay, and then let me see what's going on here, because one of these should be true. Oh, and the other one, to fix this error, go add rec.admin as a Boolean in typings express index.d.ts. Let's see here. There we go. Those look good now. All right, and this is to fix this error. Go create a route for goodbye. C ./lib, and then I think this was routes.js. Bum ba dum bum bum bum. All right, cool. We can types can be explicit or implicit. All right. Cool. So I think this is a pretty good file demonstrating how it can find errors. And then this one, if I'm not mistaken, doesn't need us to... No, it does? Okay, so I think... I think I'm going to need to check my typings. Or maybe I'm going to need to check my router. Okay, yeah, this is here. Let's try express.router. Let's see if that actually works. Because I might be going a bridge too far on this one to try to show. Because I'm trying to show, like, okay, this is just express router. That's what I'm trying to show here. Let's see. Routes. I guess I should rename that to routes. That would make sense. Let's do that. Let's go app routes.js. And then, yeah, let's go ahead and make a typo here as well. So I think this is actually kind of cool. Doesn't exist. Console.log. Doesn't exist. Doesn't exist. TS server. All right, so here's another error that it catches. So it catches TS server will tell you if a file doesn't exist. Cool. Yeah, so I think this is a pretty good file in terms of being able to show what works and what doesn't. I think I have had to type the error request handler, but usually I don't have to type. Okay. I think I'm going to do here implicitly typed. Okay, rec res next. Next. TS server knows the default function type. So we already did that, right? We kind of did that right here, didn't we? No, all users. Where did we do that? Require user. Yeah, so I think we could put that here. Rec.admin equals true. Console.log rec.user.given name. Oh, interesting. Oh, okay, so that's optional. Let's see if it can do this, though. If rec.user. To fix this error, just check that the property exists. Let's see, note. Oh, we got any comments over here? Oh, hey, welcome. I'm just kind of going through the file right now. What I'm doing is I've got this starter pack. The link is in the doobly-doo as well as in the comments. But I've got this starter pack, and I'm just trying to create a simple file that demonstrates the value that you get out of JSDoc plus TS server for the linting. So if you've got any questions, go ahead and let me know. But I'm going to finish this up, and then I'm going to publish it because the link is not, I mean, I'm editing it right now. So I'm finishing this up, and then I'm going to do a shorter video where it's like, okay, here's a file where I have all these errors, you know, what I've been doing. And then I'm going to explain what the config is. But earlier I was going through the config, kind of teasing it out, try to explain that. And then now I'm going through the example. But basically this file, it's half baked on purpose. So I'm creating all these types of errors that are common errors that you have in your program that are not solved by things like JS Hint, but are solved with the TS server. So there's comments that are suggestions for wherever there's an error, either it's super obvious, like doesn't exist, or the comment will tell you either how to turn this into an error or why this fixes an error or how to fix the error. So you can see here, it knows that this shouldn't be first name, but it's kind of funny because we didn't actually declare user1 as a type. So how does it know that? Well, it knows it because down here we are using it with something that is typed. So it's like, well, if I'm using user1 in a typed array, user1 must be of that type, so on and so forth. Also, to everybody watching, I try to say this every once in a while. If you like what you like, you get more of what you like. So if this is good content for you, if you're having any aha moments, if this is valuable at all, give it a big fat thumbs up or give it a big fat thumbs down because every thumb helps. And if you do want to subscribe, just subscribe, but hit the bell for personalized notifications so that because occasionally I do like random stuff on the channel. It's 90% code. I think 90% is a good percentage, but occasionally I do probably more than 90%, probably more like 95, but occasionally I do some other stuff. So, use personalized recommendations if you don't want to get the other stuff that isn't necessarily aligned with your interests. Okay, so yeah, I think this is actually a really, really good demonstration of the implicit typing, the explicit typing, the types of errors you can get, and this will, yeah, I'm feeling really good about this actually. I think this is a pretty darn good example. And then I think that I'm going to have to wrap up here so that I can go do Den with the fam. So let's see. Actually, let me reset this one. Git diff lib my router. I don't know. I think I might just want to check that out. Do a checkout. Because, well, let me look in here again. There was one thing where I wanted to know, can it tell that it is? No. Okay. So there's some cases where implicit typing works and some cases where it doesn't. All right. Knows this functions type implicitly, unlike those above, because it's used directly in line. Let's see. Because it's used directly in line, it doesn't need type annotation. All right. So yeah, I think this is a really good starter pack to kind of help you explore and see what JSDoc plus TS Server can do for you. And I will go ahead and push this momentarily. Yeah, we're going to do that. So let's go ahead and say, oh gosh, what is this? I don't know what to call this. This is just, I don't know, it's mostly docs, but complete readme, update readme, whoops, add more examples. Let's call it that. And then chore make prettier. Okay, let's push all that up there. So now you should have a really good project to start with. Oh, that's weird. Oh, whoops. I see why that's a problem. Let me go fix those real quick. In the README. Let's see. Does that get rewritten? Okay, so now it's being rewritten. I don't know that I really want it rewritten, but whatever, we'll go with it. Because in documentation, I prefer 4 spaces, though in code, I prefer 2 spaces. Because I feel like when it's in documentation, it's a little bit easier to read that way. Now let's see. What did it not like about this one? Is there actually any syntax error? Yeah, there's some syntax errors in here. Let's go ahead and fix those. Yeah, we can... Huh, interesting. Yeah, are there other syntax errors here that I'm not seeing? Because this is marked as JS. Var x equals, what happens if we do that? Okay, definitely don't want to do that. Cool. So maybe I want to mark these other ones as JS too. That way I can keep my spacing. Yeah, I think I will. So apparently if I mark it JS and it is a statement or an expression, I guess that's an expression, then it won't redo it. Okay, there we go. And then I'll push this up momentarily. And I might go through this just a little bit more, but I think this is pretty good. Pay close attention to your TS config. I think we can remove this section because we've covered this elsewhere. I think all of this has been covered elsewhere at this point. So I feel good about just dropping that. And then I think I've annotated these pretty well at this point, so I think we can get rid of that. Let's see where we're using @types. Make sure that it's appropriate use of @types only. There we go. That makes sense. Yep, that all looks good. So I'm just going to go down here and see, and then Vim users. Vim configuration. Let's see. And then let's call this debugging. Or checking. It's not really debugging. It's like checking that it worked. All right, that's a typo there. All right, so let's see what happens if we run TSC here. It's going to take a minute. But yeah, we get all the errors that we saw before. So this is great. So actually, Typescript checker, CLI. Okay, to see the long form output of what you'll see. TSC can show you the same errors that you'll see in VS Code or Vim, but in all files across your project at once. To check that out, run TSC from the directory where tsconfig.json exists. There we are. If you don't get error output, then double check, then make sure that, yeah. There we go. Might want to have a troubleshooting section in here. I definitely need to add a VS Code section. That needs to be a to-do for sure. So let's see. To-do, key benefits, VS Code. All right, let's go ahead and update the docs. Do you have any more, any questions? I'm kind of going to wrap this up and go get dinner, and then I'll hop back on and do, I think, the summary video of all this. But if you've got any questions for me, please go ahead and ask now. That would be the appropriate time before I head out for Din for the win-win. Let me just do cached here. And then I kind of wish that I could get rid of some of this other stuff, because this is kind of gunking up. I might remove the JS hint and the prettier or something. I don't know. There's just too many things here that aren't things that I care about anybody seeing. I do feel like they're important to be in every project, but I don't know. I kind of want to slim this down a bit, and then maybe just put the license. I could do that. I could just put the license in the, I could do a share alike license and put that down at the bottom. Then we could get rid of the license file. We can't get rid of the README, obviously. Package lock's kind of important. I guess we could get rid of it. It's not super important. It's not critically important. I feel like any minor changes are going to be okay, so we could get rid of that. I don't know. What else could we get rid of? Gotta have all this. Gotta have that. We can nix this. We can nix this. I guess we could nix all of these. I guess we could nix the .getIgnore. I don't know. I'll think about it. Because it would be nice if it was like really clean. And yeah, we'll see. What did I do here? Get diff cached. Get command-m docs cleanup and typo fixes. There we go. I don't see any more errors in there. Alrighty. All right, I'm out. So again, like if you liked, you get more of what you like. Thumb downs if you didn't like, because every thumb helps. And leave your comments, questions, tips down below in the comments. Check the doobly-doo for the related and unrelated links. Catch you later. Adios.